Suns Lakers, inherently interesting because the 7 seed is favored in this one, which makes sense. LeBron and AD versus Phoenix. What do you think about this one?
So if you could see my sheet that I have, I could show it to you, but the listeners wouldn't be able to tell, where I've tried to decide who's going to win the series and in how many games. There's like 6 or 7 things crossed out,
Is this
and
like a
I've gone
Charlie
back.
Day meme situation?
It's yeah. I don't even even as we speak right now, I don't know who I'm going to pick to win the series. Maybe I'll arrive at it at some point in the next 15 minutes. So it's if LeBron, this is so like you could get this take anywhere. If LeBron and AD are healthy, which they did not appear to be against the Warriors in the first round of the play-in, then I would pick them to beat the Suns. I would pick them to beat everybody and win the world championship of the sport of basketball. I don't know if they are healthy. I don't think that they're healthy, and so I think not only does that change the whole West outlook. I think the Suns are gonna win this series, and I think they're so solid. The things that give me concerns. I think DeAndre Ayton is going to be tested. I'm not sure he's going to pass that test. He's become adequate defensively. He's going to be asked to handle. I mean, if he's got to guard Davis when the Lakers get serious and play him at the 5, like that is tough. I don't know who's suited for that. Again, assuming Davis is healthy. But then other than that, like I don't know where you're finding the weaknesses in the Suns. We talked about this a little bit a couple weeks ago. I don't know where the exploitable issues are for Phoenix. Chris Paul's 36. He's broken down in playoffs before. Maybe that's your window if you're the Lakers, or that's what makes the Suns vulnerable. But other than that, yeah, Phoenix is really good, and I don't see the weak point that you'd normally point to as a concern.
You also pointed out the last time we podcasted the fact that Devin Booker and Chris Paul want to get to snake to the mid-range, whatever they want to do, that might help them in this series. I think I have Suns in 7, so we'll go right off the bat there. And I've pained over this one. The fact that LeBron just looked off against the Warriors, Anthony Davis looked off in the first half, I'm very concerned about the play offensively of their teammates. We were concerned last year, but this is different from the bubble because there'll be fans in Phoenix. I don't want to skew too much in that direction, but Dennis Schroder now has 3 games under his belt since coming back from COVID. We can't just assume that he's going to be good. In those minutes where they ask him to either run the offense without LeBron on the court, or if he just has the ball in his hands with LeBron off, like they've been touch and go for a good portion of this year. Can you get a good and high volume night from Kyle Kuzma? A lot of the times it feels like it's one or the other. High volume, not efficient but not high volume. I don't feel like we can just default to, like last season, they're going to take and make enough threes like they did in the postseason. I just don't think that flies here. Their defense is absolutely harrowing, though. We watched what they were able to do to the Warriors. But I also wonder, Phoenix is better structured, better suited to navigate that. Who are you? You're putting Caruso on Booker or Chris Paul. What are you doing with the other? It's Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. If it's Dennis Schroder, they're in trouble because we saw him get burned in the Warriors game at points. The Suns, like that's a real issue. Just like they're going to have problems defending the Lakers' 2 best players, I don't think the Lakers, despite all their defense is credible. It was first in the league without LeBron and AD, so I'm not trying to downplay that. But the consistency those two play with, and the decisions both Booker and Chris Paul make if they are double-teamed, and Booker is double-teamed more often than Chris Paul, they're just so used to that now, and they're going to make the right play. And I trust their supporting cast. If it's a Mikal Bridges, you need him to take a 3, or attack a closeout, or cut to the basket. He can do that. Cam Johnson has given them good minutes. My biggest concern here, and it's not the lack of experience outside Chris Paul and Jay Crowder, is the center rotation. Because the Dario Saric at the 5 minutes statistically have been great. That came against a lot of second units. There was a stretch where he was closing games over DeAndre Ayton. That's since passed, and Saric just isn't playing as much. It feels like offenses have figured out how to attack those units. They can't afford Ayton to disappear like he has, and it can happen at either end of the floor. I think he's more likely to get played off the floor offensively than defensively. I don't actually mind him having to go up against Anthony Davis, especially if Jay Crowder's also on the court. What I do think helps the Suns, and you can tell me if I'm crazy here, bringing in Torrey Craig. All of a sudden, there's this situation where between Torrey Craig, Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, you can get creative with how you're going after LeBron James and Anthony Davis, I think. And so that could end up being big for them. if LeBron's ankle wasn't in question, if Davis hadn't sort of been all over the place a lot this year, even coming back from the injury, I would be picking the Lakers. I want to make that clear. But they're not healthy. Their third most important player isn't healthy and has been all over the place himself. Suns in 7 feels like the right pick here. And my final thing to wrap up would be, and obviously if you have X factors, I'm just going to piggyback off of those. But I think Jay Crowder's my X factor for Phoenix. Will they consider doing like the Jay Crowder, Torrey Craig front court, where they just don't have a center if Ayton's getting cooked enough? And if it's Davis at the 5, you don't do that if it's Gasol and Davis. But that's something I'm just going to look at. But Jay Crowder's been huge defensively for them all year. The Lakers' X factor for me has to be Dennis Schroder, because they need him to be able to generate his own shots, put pressure on the basket. It's not, and again, it's not just about the minutes LeBron is off the court, of which there will be very few. It's the minutes that he's on the court too, and you don't necessarily have him on the ball.
Yeah, it's tough. As you were talking about Crowder, there's nobody great for LeBron, but if LeBron is diminished, then Crowder's I'm pretty good with Crowder there. And then the other thing that does is Bridges is going to guard someone that is not qualified to be guarded by Mikal Bridges. And he is going to shut that guy down and be all over the place in the passing lanes. And so I think just macro, the Lakers are, if the Lakers lose this series, which I think they will, I think I'm going to go with you and say Suns in 7, because I can't do it in 6 because that means they'd have to win it in LA. And I can't do it in 5 because that's not enough respect for James and Davis. So it's 7. But I just think that, like, I just don't know where the Lakers are going to be able to consistently succeed on offense if James or Davis, and is obviously they have no chance if both of them are not dominant offensively, but if one or the other, because I don't trust Schroder at all. KCP might hit some shots. Kuzma, I don't trust. Wes Matthews, I don't trust to play significant minutes and matter. Like they're just not going to be able to score. I feel like I've said that about several teams, but it's an acute issue in this series because it's just the Suns, I think, are going to score. I think they have too many ways to get that done. Even against the defense as good as the Lakers, I just don't know how. Again, if LeBron and AD are magically healthy, erase everything I just said, and I think the Lakers win the series. But as it stands now, I think it's going to be really hard for them to compete offensively.
Yeah, having Jay Crowder on LeBron with, I guess, Ayton on Davis, and if you're able to use Torrey Craig and or Mikal Bridges as the helpers because of who they're coming off of, big for Phoenix. I also think, depending on how the Lakers mirror minutes with who's ever guarding Chris Paul, or let's say it's Devin, let's say it's Chris Paul, are they pulling Alex Caruso when Chris Paul sits? And then the minutes that Devin Booker and Cameron Payne play together, they might be few and far between. They might be able to put real pressure on the Lakers defense in those situations then. And so Cam Payne could be another X factor here. I'll say this, I trust Cam Payne coming into this series more than I do Dennis Schroder.
I was just going to say, I think I'd rather have Payne than Schroder just in a vacuum for what he does. I just say Ayton is my X factor for Phoenix. And for the Lakers, you can't pick James or Davis. So I guess I'll probably just go Kuzma because maybe that's a way that you get somebody hot, he makes some shots, and that wins him a game. I don't know. But that's pretty bleak when Kuzma's your X factor.
Right. Maybe he sees time running up against Book defensively too, that makes him huge. Yeah. Grant, this was great as always. Thank you for giving me so much of your time. I did not expect both of us to have the Suns beating the Lakers, though. Maybe that's going to be a more popular pick than I thought. I thought Suns in 7 was the saucy selection, but perhaps it's not.